I want to thank you all for being here with us, and thank you for joining us today for Adulting 101 House Hacking, which is sponsored by Cambridge Trust. My name is Holly Blanchard. I am one of the co-chairs of the Manchester Young Professionals Advisory Council. I also serve on the Programs Committee, and in my full-time role, I'm with the Children's Hospital at Dartmouth-Hitchcock on the Community Relations team. We're excited to be here and have you all joining us this afternoon. We've put together a great program for you today, all about house hacking. And if you're not familiar, it's a method to live for free or almost for free by making a multi-unit rental property your principal residence. My fiance and I actually did this ourselves. This past November, we purchased our first two-family home. It's been really exciting. We had no idea what we were getting ourselves into, but luckily our first tenant happened to be my sister, so it's made that pretty easy. But she, in paying rent, helps pay the majority of our mortgage, which is really incredible when you think about it. We have a great lineup of panelists today who are all young professionals and leaders in their respective fields. They'll be sharing their contact info with all of us to continue the conversation past our Lunch and Learn program today. If you have an interest in reaching out to them, please do so. They're more than happy to talk with you. And if you're interested in learning more about Manchester Young Professionals and about our programs that we offer, I would encourage you to consider attending one of our programs called The Scoop. We actually have one this afternoon that's completely filled. We're getting back to doing these in person, which is really exciting. But the next one will be held on September 2nd at 4 p.m. At the Chamber office on Hanover Street. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can reach out to Corinne on this call. You can message her directly and find out more information on how to sign up for that. So this program today, we're going to keep it short and sweet and get right to the point, but each panelist will have 15 minutes to present on their respective topics. If during the presentation, if you could please remain muted, it looks like most of you already are. And if you enter into speaker mode for the best viewing format, you'll enjoy that, I'm sure, maybe rather than seeing the whole gallery view, but completely up to you. A couple of our presenters will be doing PowerPoint presentations as well. And as we're going, as our presenters are talking, if you have questions for them, please feel free to put them in the chat. We will have a Q&A section at the end of the program, but certainly as you think of these questions, pop them right into the chat. And at the end, when we do hit that Q&A portion of the program, if you'd like to unmute yourselves and ask the questions directly to the speaker, you're more than welcome to, or I can ask on your behalf. And like I said at the very beginning, this program is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel after the session. So let's get started. I'll start by introducing our first panelist, Kate Gallagher. She's the Senior Community Partnerships and Development Specialist for Cambridge Trust, which is a greater Boston area bank and trust company. Kate has over 9 years of financial services experience, and she thoroughly enjoys her work in Cambridge Trust Residential Lending Group as a mortgage lender working with first-time and low to moderate income home buyers. She regularly participates in and often hosts home buyer seminars to help educate buyers on the mortgage lending process, and liaises with local nonprofits and housing agencies to help bring Cambridge Trust resources into the communities and the bank operates in. So Kate, thank you so much for being here and for speaking on behalf of first-time home buying. I'll pass it off to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Holly, and thank you to the Manchester Young Professionals for having me today. I'm excited to be a member as well as a presenter. So yeah, I'm going to talk about multifamily financing, and just a quick caveat. Typically, I would spend an entire hour or more on this topic. So 15 minutes is going to be a stretch. So this is going to be very, very surface level, basic, but just to give you kind of an idea of what to expect. And I'll provide you with some resources on how to get a little more information on this topic throughout my presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. So I do have a presentation for us. There we go. All right, can everybody see that? I'm completely illiterate when it comes to computers. So again, I'm going to go over the lending process specifically, couple of considerations in particular to multifamily property, the lending process, and the unique characteristics of buying a multifamily. So first step in your home buying process, whether it's a multifamily or a single family, is to speak to a lender and get pre-qualified or pre-approved. There is a difference between the two. Pre-qualification is it's a verbal conversation or a written conversation via email basic information about yourself, your situation, what you're looking for, what you're thinking, and a lender can give you a rough idea of, yeah, that's doable, or no, you need to consider X, Y, P, Z, Q. It is pre-qualification is not a commitment to lend, but it does give you a starting point in your home buying process. A pre-approval, on the other hand, is a full mortgage application. You're going to need to provide supporting documentation, including your tax returns, W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements. The lender and their team is going to pull your credit, which is going to be a hard credit pull. And a pre-approval is an official commitment to lend on the bank's part, assuming your situation doesn't change between the time the letter is produced and closing. So a lot of organizations these days will provide what's called a pre-approval letter that's signed by a lender. The application and supporting documents do not go through underwriting, but the lender will look through your situation, will run you through different programs, desktop underwriter, different mortgage programs that we have to get a better sense as to what you would qualify for based on your situation. The letter is called a pre-approval. Technically, it's not a commitment to lend, so it is technically a pre-qualification. The main point I'm trying to make here is you should talk to a lender, try and get a full mortgage application put in. You will have a better sense as to your situation when you do that, and you can have a much more comprehensive conversation with a real estate agent about what you will and will not be approved for when you make a purchase and sales, when you make an offer and get a purchase and sales agreement set up. So as a lender, what I'm looking for, what I and my team are looking for are what we call the 4 C's of lending. So we're looking at your capacity, your capital, your credit, and your collateral. So to run through really quickly, your capacity is going to be your income. How much are you making to support your loan? We need to ensure that you bring in enough funds to actually cover the mortgage payment plus your other loans and outstanding debts. So we're going to look at your, your salary, looking at your tax returns to verify your income. So we're going to need 3 years of tax returns. We are going to look and ensure that your income is stable and likely to continue. So we want to see some stability in your income and your employment. We want to see that the last 2 years of your employment have been in the same industry or field. So, whether it's you're in financial services, you're in, administrative work, you're in, whatever your employment is, we want to see that it's consistent. You're not jumping around from different jobs to different jobs. We are also, if we're looking at a W-2 employee, we're looking at gross income. If you're self-employed, we're going to be looking at net income. Seasonal employment, hourly income, those can all qualify. Social Security, if you're on Social Security, disability, those are all types of income we can look at to qualify you. If you have any specific questions about that, please reach out. It can be very nuanced for sure. So definitely reach out if you have questions on that. But next, we're going to be looking at your savings. How much money do you have to cover your down payment, your closing costs, and make sure that you still have enough money left in the bank after closing to support yourself. So we need to see savings in a deposit account, checking or savings account. Please don't show up with cash. We need to see it in an account. We need to be able to see documentation on the funds, where they came from, how they're coming to you. If there are large deposits in your accounts, we're going to want to see where those came from, what they're about. We're going to be looking at two months of bank statements, and again, that's checking savings. We can also look at retirement accounts, 401ks, that kind of deal. Those absolutely will be used to factor in your liquid assets. And anything you have in that regard can help in your qualifying ratios, which we'll talk about next. But it's important for us to have a full picture of your financial situation. And then credit score. It's not necessarily just about your score, but your score is very important. Your credit score is a numerical value assigned to you that tells us how likely you are to repay a debt. So of course, the higher your credit score, the more likely it looks to us that you're going to repay the debt. Your credit score does have pretty big impact on your ability our ability to lend to you. We want to see that you pay your bills on time and that you are not overextending yourself credit wise. Just because you have a credit card that allows you, has a $15,000 credit limit, doesn't necessarily mean you should be spending $15,000 every month. A credit is something, again, I could spend an entire hour on. So if you have specific questions on that, let me know. But suffice to say, the best thing you can do with your credit is to pay off all your debts on time and to not overextend yourself with credit. And I'll talk a little bit more about different programs do have credit limits, minimums in terms of, if your credit score is below a certain amount, you may not qualify for a certain program. So I'll get into the specifics of that in a little bit. But if you do have specific questions on your credit situation, reach out to me separately and we can discuss. And then finally, we're going to look at the property itself, your collateral. The house itself, the property itself is the asset that secures this loan. So as a financial institution, we need to see that the property appraises for that value. As you all know, I'm sure most of you know right now, appraisals can take a long time to turn around. As a bank, we do not have any control over the appraisal process. We don't contact with the appraiser. There's a level of opacity between us to keep things fair, but they do take a while to turn around, and it is a complicated process where the appraiser will look at properties, similar properties in the area to quantify the value of the property. You may have heard a lot of properties because, and I know my fellow presenters will talk about this in a little bit, but right now housing prices are very high. So appraisal might not come in at the sales price, at which point you may need to be prepared to bring more money to the table or renegotiate your sales price if that's the case. So, bear in mind that hiccups like that do happen. And, it's something to consider when you're looking at any property, but multifamilies as well. So I mentioned qualifying ratios. So these are factors that we look at when we are trying to ensure that you can afford this loan. So there's two ratios that we look at: your housing ratio, or what we call the front ratio. It's your total monthly housing expenses as a percentage of your gross monthly income. So your housing expenses includes, we call it PITI, or your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And part of that insurance piece may be private mortgage insurance, which we'll talk about a little bit more when I get to specific programs. But suffice to say, most programs, whether they're first-time home buyer or not, will want you to stay within 33 to 36% of your gross monthly income. So if you're only making enough money to cover, so you need to make enough money to cover your monthly housing expenses each month, and you need to be within those ratios for us to qualify you. And the same can be said with total debt ratio, or your BAC ratio. Again, it's your total monthly debt as a factor of your gross monthly income, needs to stay within 35 to 45%. And your total debt includes your PITI, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and then other lines of debt. So car payments, student loans, installment loans, credit cards, those types of things. It's important for us to see all of these factors because, again, we need to make sure that you can actually afford this housing payment. And we want to make sure that you're in a position where you can be a successful homeowner. So I can't stress enough how important it is that you're upfront and thorough with your lender, and that you find a lender that you're comfortable talking to about these things. It's better for us to know at the outset what your situation is than to find out after you've already put in a purchase and sales, an offer, gotten your purchase and sales agreement. We've started this process, and all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, by the way, I have $50,000 in student debt that's in deferment, and that's gonna derail your process entirely. A point about student loans. I know right now a lot of student loans are in deferment because of COVID. We still do have to include those in your calculations. Just because you're not currently paying that loan right now does not mean that it's not a factor. And because we have to assume that at some point you are going to be paying that back. So just keep in mind that, again, if your student loans are in deferment at the moment, we do still need to know about them. They're going to come up on your credit report anyway, so we will see it regardless, but we are going to need to know about those and figure out what your payment was prior to deferment to calculate that into your situation. And then to talk about just specific lending considerations for a multifamily. From a bank's perspective, owning a multifamily is a small business. So there are going to be more underwriting due diligence and considerations when it comes to your mortgage application. It's going to take more time. It's going to be more thorough. So a quick close is probably not in the cards for you if you're buying a multifamily, and be prepared for it to be a process in documentation, in making sure that your account balances are documented, that sort of thing. It's a more complicated process in the sense that our underwriters are going to be very, very scrupulous while they go through your situation. Your closing costs may be higher than with a single family home as well. Multifamilies are going to cost more. The higher the purchase price, the more your closing costs are going to be. It's just and your mortgage payments are going to be. It's just a factor of the situation. So keep in mind that you're going to have to bring more cash to the table for your closing with a multifamily. I highly recommend that you work with a real estate agent that has experience with multifamily properties. There are some nuances and intricacies in the process of purchasing real estate that may or may not have tenants in it, what certificates you need, a lot of things that are outside of my realm of expertise, but a real estate agent with experience with multifamilies is going to know how to negotiate on your behalf and ask the right questions when it comes to multifamily properties. And I know this particular presentation we're focusing on primary residences in which you will be living and renting out a separate unit of versus an investment property. There is a very big distinction in the mortgage industry between these two. I'm focusing specifically on the former. If you have specific questions about investment properties, that's not an area of expertise that I have, but suffice to say, they're very different mortgage programs, different opportunities for folks when it comes to that. So we're talking specifically about primary residences in which you're renting out a portion of the unit. And then one other thing to keep in mind, if you are a first-time homeowner, you should expect to partake in first-time homeowner education. A couple of different organizations around New Hampshire that offer certificates of completion with a homebuyer education seminar. Excuse me. That certificate will be your ticket into a lot of the first-time homeowner mortgage programs. And as well as some may also require landlord training as well if you're buying a multifamily, whether or not you're first time or first time homeowner going into your second purchase, maybe a multifamily. Keep in mind, you need to check with your lender on what the requirements are, but every program has different nuances, and first-time homeowner and landlord training may be required. So keep that in mind as you're going through the process. Frankly, I think it's just prudent to take the courses. They're not expensive. Usually they're about 8 hours, sometimes split over a few evenings or days. Some offer just a single day, long-term 8-hour program, but they are absolutely fantastic to kind of wrap your head around this whole process. Are you ready to do this? What are the key components? Who's the team that you need to put together to be successful in this process? And again, the certificates are typically required for access to these first-time homebuyer mortgage programs. So I can't say enough good things about them. So NeighborWorks of Southern New Hampshire and the Housing Partnership are two organizations Cambridge Trust works with, but there are others out there. If you do a little Googling, you can find different programs. And just be sure when you talk to your lender that whatever program you do go through, you get your certificate from, that it fulfills the requirements of the particular loan product that you're with in that regard. So I'll jump into some specific products. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, it's important to shop around when you're looking for a mortgage. You can have your credit pulled multiple times without it impacting your overall credit score after the first pull if you are shopping around for a mortgage within 30 days. So if you go to one bank, have them pull your credit to see what you qualify for, and then you have 30 days to then shop around at different organizations to try and find a good loan that fits you. So I do highly recommend you shop around local shops, national shops. There's difference between the two. There are pros and cons to each. I won't get into that too much, but suffice to say, it's important to shop around because many organizations, financial institutions like Cambridge Trust will have their own what's called portfolio programs, so that our Cambridge Trust Good Neighbor program is something that you can only get at Cambridge Trust. It's a first time or low to moderate income homebuyer program that is applicable to 2-family multi-units. You can put as little as 5% down with 2 months reserves. So reserves are additional funding that we require you to have in liquid assets after closing to help to ensure that you can cover the cost of your loan for a determined amount of time. So 2 months in this case. So we need to see 2 months of your mortgage payment in your account after closing to ensure that you're not at zero on the day you close, which is never a good feeling to have. So the great thing about Granite State Good Neighbor, it's a 30-year fixed interest rate. Right now, rate is at 2.5%, 2.55 APR, and it has no private mortgage insurance, which is a type of insurance that is typically required on mortgages where the applicant cannot put 20% down. So the bank is going to charge an extra insurance to cover the difference between 20% and whatever you do put down. So it can be an additional fee on top of, or additional payment on top of your typical mortgage payment. So this particular product, no mortgage insurance, no private mortgage insurance, which is great. A lot of first-time homebuyer programs will have reduced private mortgage insurance. So just something to keep in mind when you're shopping around. Ask questions about the differences between different products. For instance, this product, the credit score can be as low as 660 with 5% down. Other programs may have lower credit score requirements. Same with debt to income ratios. So that, again, this program allows for 45% debt to income ratio. Others can offer sometimes as much as 50%. So just differences in programs that you should keep in mind and ask your lender about as you're shopping around. Just really quick, couple of other different programs. Home Possible, provided by Freddie Mac, 5% down for a multifamily, but they require 6 months reserves. So keep in mind, you're going to have 6 additional mortgage payments in your checking or savings account after close with this product. However, credit scores can go down as low as 620 and debt to income ratios as high as 49%. So again, those are the differences between different programs, different terms as well, 30, 20, or 15. And similar, Fannie Mae's Home Ready, as much as 15 to 25% down requirements, 6 months reserves, again, credit score as low as 620, but debt to income ratio as high as 49%. So, just the different nuances on these products. And as I mentioned, each lender is going to have their own portfolio products to shop around. New Hampshire Housing also offers a slew of first-time homebuyer and low to moderate income homebuyer programs. Cambridge Trust does have access to those. Other banks may as well. FHA loans, you may know about, government-sponsored loans. Typically lower credit score requirements, but the mortgage insurance that we talked about, that private mortgage insurance, is required for the life of the loan. And there's also an upfront mortgage insurance payment that you'll need to pay at closing, which can add up pretty quickly. It's based on the purchase price and how much you put down. So it can get a little pricey pretty quickly. And then VA, if you are a veteran or your spouse or partner is a veteran, you might have access to VA loans as well, which is another mortgage opportunity. So really quickly, I'll just go through before closing. Need to keep in mind you're going to have to pay for your homeowners or hazards insurance policy a full year up front. So that again is an additional cost that may be added on to closing. Prior to closing, after you've put in your purchase and sales, you've gotten your purchase and sales, before closing, you will be re-verified. So updated documents will need to be provided. There'll be another credit pull before closing. So a couple of things to consider in that regard is, maintain your deposit balances. Again, make sure you have those reserves on hand. Make sure you've got enough cash to cover your closing expenses. Do not open any new lines of credit or make large purchases between that time frame. Save all of your big ticket purchases until after close. Literally the day after close, you can do that if you want, but don't do it beforehand because it may jeopardize your closing if we see that you've taken out 2 or 3 more credit cards, or you've started a Jordan's Furniture account, or you've gone and bought that sports car as a little treat to yourself. Please don't do that. And then also do not change jobs because we will verify your employment, and we want to make sure that your income is, again, stable and consistent. So whatever you do, don't change jobs between that time frame to avoid any potential delays in closing or issues there. You will receive a closing disclosure 3 days prior to your closing date, which will detail all the specifics of your closing costs. And again, make sure when you have your cash to close, bring it in the form of a cashier's check made out to yourself. Your title company will go through all the specifics there, but just a little note to keep in mind. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much, Kate. I know it's such an overwhelming process when you think about it as a first-time home buyer, and I know that's typically an hour-long presentation for you, and you nailed it right down into a shortened presentation. So thank you so much. Like we said at the beginning, if you have specific questions, as it is a lot to take in, please do feel free to reach out to Kate. We'll provide her contact information to you. All right, next, we're excited to have Nick Gray. He's the owner of Gray Property Group, a full-service real estate firm based in Manchester and specializing in multifamily investment, brokerage, and management. A former engineer, Nick got his start by house hacking a duplex, so he enjoys working with new and aspiring real estate investors. Nick, thanks so much for being here. I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the Manchester market and why it's so important for young people to invest.
Sounds good. I appreciate it, Holly. As Holly mentioned, my name is Nick Gray. I'm a real estate investor and broker based in Manchester. And I was very excited to be a part of this presentation today when Corinne asked me, because although I've decided to go the route of becoming a full-time real estate professional, house hacking is how I originally got my start. And I think it's a really beneficial thing for anyone to do, whether it's going to be their first and their last deal, just something to use to gain financial independence so they can take greater risk in another area of life, or if, like me, they want to go into real estate full-time and make it a full career. So I do have a set of slides with me today. Let me just go ahead and share my screen, and then we'll get started. Can everyone see those slides full screen? Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to give a very surface level overview of multifamily house hacking. And if anyone has questions, my contact information is at the end, and you can feel free to reach out and we can talk through these things in more detail. Just to give you an overview of what I'll be talking about today, first I'll tell you a bit more about my story and why I feel so strongly about house hacking myself. Then I'll give a synopsis of the reasons why someone might want to house hack, both why someone might want to do it personally in answering the what's in it for me question, or why someone might want to do it for the greater good, for the sake of benefiting the local community. Then I'll provide a market overview, give you some basic tips on finding the right property, and then a quick overview on how you can crunch the numbers and make sure that a particular property is right for you. So my story, not to repeat my bio again, but I own Great Property Group, and we do both real estate investment, brokerage, and management. We're based here in Manchester, and between the apartments that I own and the ones that we manage, we've got about 50 apartments worth of assets under management. I'm a former aerospace engineer, having worked for Pratt & Whitney right out of school in 2017 and 2018. But I had fallen in love with real estate right around that time, leaving grad school, and I made the quick decision that I was going to abandon my my office job with Pratt & Whitney, do a house hacking deal to get into real estate and sort of dip my toe in the water, and then go full time as a real estate investor and broker after that. Some of the most recent projects I've done have been Bayberry Green Apartments in Epping, which is a set of 8-unit townhomes that I purchased and conducted a full cosmetic renovation on last year. And then Liberty Manor Apartments in Derry, which is 12 units that I bought and renovated in the year 2020. And then most recently is our office building, 1650 Elm Street, which we bought this summer and which is under renovation as we speak. But before I kind of graduated to this mid-size multifamily level, I got started with small multifamilies, and there were a number of small multifamilies that I owned and operated. But my very first deal was 1012 Auburn Street in Exeter. It was a duplex right near downtown Exeter with 2 beds and 1,000 square feet of space per unit. I purchased it for 260 grand late in the year 2017 after an off-market and direct mail search. And I'm a big supporter of trying to look off-market, trying to get creative and find deals that are priced below the rest of priced advantageously so that cash flow can be better. And for the Exeter market, which is a very nice area with high multifamily prices, this was a good deal at the time. I lived there for 2 years. I actually renovated one of the units that I was living in. You can see me there, see me there painting my wall and doing some landscaping work in the backyard. But I lived in one unit. I spruced up that unit, and then I did a unit swap with the tenants next door, moving into the one next door, receiving higher rent for that unit that I had renovated, and then doing the same thing in the second unit at that point. So some reasons why you might want to house hack. There's both personal reasons as well as community reasons. The personal reasons are it's an excellent tool for someone to either reduce or eliminate their net housing cost. So rather than paying a large lump sum of rent to a landlord every month, you could instead buy a property that has income coming from other units. And in doing so, your net housing cost is oftentimes very little. For example, you could buy a duplex that's grossing $3,000 a month, $1,500 per unit. You could rent one unit out for $1,500 a month, live in the other unit. And as I'll show you some numbers on the next slide, when you subtract off all of the operating costs of operating that building, your net cost is going to be very little. From a cash flow standpoint, not to mention all the additional benefits of ownership, like building equity as your loan is paid down and as the market appreciates. Also, as Kate mentioned, there's a lot of low money down first-time homebuyer programs that are great opportunities for someone to own a real asset at a very young point in life. And house hacking is a way to be able to qualify for all those debt financial metrics that she was mentioning, with the help of tenants paying your mortgage versus having to be 100% responsible for it yourself. And then finally, there's just the pride of ownership and a sense of independence. I know when I bought my duplex at age 23, it took everything that I could muster in coming up with that 3% down payment for the FHA loan, the 3.5% down payment. But I felt like I had done a really great thing, and I certainly improved that property over time. And it was something that even to this day, I feel like was one of the best decisions I ever made. Just a quick example of what the numbers might look like in a house hacking experience. And I'm not going to get too into the weeds because Joseph Getz is going to talk about the ins and outs of his experiences house hacking. But just very simply here, I just want to point out that if you rent, you have fewer expenses, you have less responsibility, but the net cost may end up being a lot greater. In my circumstance, I would have paid $1,500 a month to the owner for my 2-bedroom apartment. And then utilities with heat, electric, and cold water included in this circumstance would be $175 a month, meaning my net housing cost would be $1,675 a month. Whereas with house hacking, sure, there's a lot more bills that you got to track and that you need to be responsible for, but your principal and interest to pay off the mortgage was only $1,140 in my case. Property taxes were $500, property insurance $90. I had the same utility cost as I would as a tenant of $175, and then some minor repairs and grounds maintenance for a small little duplex in Exeter. So more expenses, but you see that when you subtract off the $1,500 of gross rent from the unit next door, and then count the fact that I was paying down my loan $500 a month, assuming no market appreciation whatsoever, which has certainly occurred in the past few years, but assuming no market appreciation, my net housing cost was only $130 a month at that time. And on top of that, there were a few months when I chose to rent the second bedroom within my unit. So I was house hacking my house hacked apartment, and I was actually making money in the building for quite a bit of time, several $100s a month, which was something that enabled me to go out and buy a 4-unit after that, then another 4-unit, and then graduate to the level I'm at now, where I'm doing 12 units, 8 units, hopefully doing something like 20, 25 units in the coming months. And this is a great thing that anyone should do, because even if you don't want to become a full-time real estate professional like myself, being able to eliminate your housing cost empowers you to do whatever it is you want with your life. You don't need to go buy a second multifamily. It might be your last deal ever, but at least you have more cash on hand to take a personal life risk in going to a job that you're passionate about, but that pays a little bit less, or maybe starting a restaurant, starting another small business, or who knows, just going on vacation. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that you're giving yourself options at a very young point in life if you go the house hacking route. And that's why I believe so strongly in it. And it's not all just about personal reasons why you want to house hack. It's also really good for the community. And I feel strongly that we need to encourage more owner occupancy in Manchester, because when more people live in a property that they own, there is that pride of ownership. They're going to take care of the place better. There's also going to be more oversight of their neighborhoods. And that is what we need to clean up some areas of our city that are so badly ailed right now with crime and drugs and homelessness. If we have new real estate investors taking the risk of buying their first multifamily, cleaning those properties up and treating the lots like they should be, we're going to improve Manchester's middle-class housing stock, and that's going to have all kinds of second-order effects. If people can grow up in a middle-class family and expect to have safety and a quality standard of living, they're going to be able to do better in school. They're going to stay away from crime, and there's going to be a lot of ancillary effects that go along with that. Also, property tax revenues will be higher for the city, and the city can direct that additional funds into infrastructure and investment, and perhaps maybe an additional social safety net. It's all really great things, and it begins with people operating on a local level, making a decision to improve their community one building at a time. And I'm always very eager to work with first-time aspiring investors who want to start that path the way I did. Just to give you a quick overview of the market, there's about 4,000 multifamily properties in Manchester. So certainly no shortage of opportunity out there for someone trying to find their very first deal. And that totals about 18,000 apartment units. Right now, we are in quite a surge in prices within the market. Last year, most real estate investors thought that the market was high at about 125 grand a unit. But just in the last year, fueled by a lot of increased confidence coming out of the COVID pandemic, fueled by government stimulus, fueled by a lot of pent up demand, for people wanting to move to New Hampshire. We've seen a 25% increase in prices to about 163 grand a unit in the 2 to 4 unit range. And medium 2-bedroom rents have risen as well, 4.5%, not as steep, but still quite a clip relative to the history. And we're now at a medium 2-bedroom rent of $1,572 a month. Vacancy is still close to the floor at 0.9% in Manchester and about 0.4% statewide. Just an astounding statistic versus some of the historicals that we've seen of 2 or 3% in New Hampshire. Finding the right property. There's some key property features you want to look for. First, it's very cliche, but location, location, location. All the tips that I'm going to tell you today, they're all effective to the extent that you have a high ceiling on your building and on your rents. And if you buy in a war zone area of Manchester, there's going to be a limit to how nice you're going to be able to make your place, how high your rents are going to be able to go. So you do need to use some common sense in buying in locations where people want to live. But from a house hacker standpoint, a good rule of thumb is just buy properties where you want to live, where you want to spend the next 2 to 5 years of your life in a house hack property, because you know it'll be desirable down the road for tenants. You also want higher unit counts, higher bedroom counts. The more units you have, the more bedrooms you have, the more rent there is to take care of the roof, to take care of landscaping. There's just more economy of scale. Separate utilities are very nice to have. They make your life easier as a landlord, and they also benefit cash flow. And then finally, limited deferred maintenance. You don't want to be going into a multifamily property as a first-time owner and having to pay the price of the previous owner's oversights. Make sure that you're buying properties that could just use a cosmetic renovation, but don't need new heating systems, new wiring, a new roof. And the way to avoid those pitfalls is to work with a broker who has multifamily experience. Unfortunately, most agents running around can say that they've sold multifamily, but they don't own and operate a lot of multifamily. So, shameless pitch, I guess, for the agents in my company and myself, is that, we're owners ourselves, we're investors serving other investors, and we're able to help people avoid the pitfalls that we've had to avoid ourselves. You want to identify value add opportunities too, perhaps a way that you can add cosmetic improvements, separate utilities, add bedrooms, increase the rent that you're going to receive for relatively low money out of pocket. And make sure that you are staying grounded and that you're making offers based on the property financials, that you're paying a price that corresponds not just to the market, what people say a property is worth in today's day and age, but what the actual rents dictate. And to that end, you want to really know your numbers cold, and you want to work with someone who's able to crunch the numbers in an effective way. I don't expect you to read the numbers on this spreadsheet here, but whenever we buy properties, we have very detailed set of financials in financial models that I've built. And we use conservative assumptions like 5% vacancy credit loss. Even if the current market's only at 0.9%, we build in 9% property management, even if we intend to self-manage. You always want to be able to support a 9% property management fee if you move out of the property and you need some kind of professional help with the management. And then a healthy repair and CapEx budget. By CapEx, I mean capital expenditure. You want to always be able to devote 10% of your gross rent to those building improvements. And you build a detailed set of your income and your expenses for the building, and you offer what the numbers dictate and not a penny higher. And if you do that, you'll stay out of trouble with regard to being able to make your mortgage payments. Good target to have is a 12% cash return and a 1.4 debt coverage ratio, basically meaning you want to have a 40% margin on your ability to pay your debt, such that if cash flow, as cash flow rises and falls throughout the year and is inconsistent over time, you're always able to pay lenders like Kate Gallagher what they're owed. And that's it for my presentation. In conclusion, I've told you a bit about my story and how I got into real estate. I've told you about the reasons why you might want to house hack, both personal and societal. And I've given you a quick overview of the market, and I've outlined how you might want to go through the process to find your right property and to crunch the numbers. Here's my contact information, and I would be happy to sit down and speak with anyone about the multifamily search process if they're interested, or share some of the financial models that I've alluded to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. I really enjoyed hearing your story and learning about your journey to where you are now. And I wish you continued success in all that you do. But thank you so much for that information. Without further ado, our final panelist, Joseph Getz. Joseph has a BS in entrepreneurial studies from the Silberman College of Business at Farley Dickinson University in Madison, New Jersey. And since graduating college in 2013, has worked in the craft beer industry, become a real estate investor, and most recently has started a long distance pet transport business, which I'm excited to hear more about, called Dog Hop. So Joseph, thanks so much for joining us. Before I hand it over to you, if anyone does have questions for Kate, for Nick, or as Joseph is speaking, feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll get to those after Joseph's presentation.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having me, guys. First and foremost, my wife is Lauren Getz. She's the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Greater Manchester Chamber. So she is Corinne's coworker. And yeah, I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit about my background, my story, and Lauren and I, and how we became house hackers. We are currently owner occupying a 4-unit multifamily here in the north end of Manchester, and how that has allowed us to have flexibility in our careers and start another business, which we'll see if we have time to touch on afterwards. But yeah, I went to Farley Dickinson University in Madison, New Jersey. Lauren and I actually both ended up going out of state to college there. We started dating in high school, stayed together throughout college. While I was in college, I started a small business. It was kind of like a DVD kiosk machine, like a Redbox type, put that in the student center, kind of got my feet wet, but really didn't know what I was doing at the time. But looking back, it was a really good experience and has helped me in starting my new business now. But after college, I graduated in 2013. I joined a management program at ShopRite Supermarkets down in New Jersey. Lauren and I lived in an apartment down there for a couple of years. While working at ShopRite, I took to home brewing in our apartment. Lauren's father at the time was an avid home brewer, a very accomplished home brewer, and I started making beer in our apartment. And that kind of transferred to my next career. When we moved back to New Hampshire in 2015, we decided to move back closer to home, be closer to family. And I got my foot in the door at Smutty Nose Brewing Company. And I was there for the summer of 2015. While I was there, I joined Brew Free or Die, which is one of New Hampshire's largest homebrew clubs. And in the club, I met Rob and Lisa North. And at the time, they were in the process of starting their own brewery. And it was kind of just right place, right time in meeting them. And I ended up in the fall of 2015 becoming one of the first 4 or 5 employees at Great North Ale Works, which some of you may have been to or know about here in Manchester. And from 2015 to 2019, I was the tasting room manager, among other things. When it was a small staff, I was pretty much doing everything except for brewing, working on the canning line, working in the cellar, doing social media, marketing, you name it. But that was a great experience. It didn't, it wasn't the most lucrative, job to have, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I left full time. I'm still part-time there, working in the tasting room, but I left full-time there in 2019. And for the last couple of years, I actually was a UPS delivery driver. And that was a great kind of middle intermediate kind of career for me. And the pay was really good. And it allowed us to transition to, what we're doing now with Dog Hop. But while going back now, while we were, while I was working at Great North Ale Works, Lauren and I were renting an apartment here in the North End. We got married in 2016. And then after that, we started talking about buying a home. I mean, that's kind of that was sort of the next step. And when we really sat down and looked at the numbers, we realized, we were having a hard enough time, just paying rent. Rent has increasingly gone up here in Manchester, and looking at paying, mortgage, taxes, just maintenance, everything. I realized that we wouldn't really be able to afford that. And that got me just into, doing different research. And I was talking to a college buddy, and he actually turned me on to Bigger Pockets. And Nick might know about, I'm sure Nick knows about Bigger Pockets, but biggerpockets.com, they have a podcast. Basically, it's a whole business and network based around real estate and real estate education. And once I was turned on to the podcast, I became addicted with listening to the episodes. And basically, every single week they come out with a podcast where they're interviewing, kind of like this, where they're talking to new real estate investors that talk about their house hacking experiences, all the way up to investors that have 1,000 units that they manage and own and operate. And I started just learning, all about house hacking and the opportunity to live in a multifamily house, live in one unit and rent out the other unit or units, and essentially, live there for free, as Nick kind of talked about. And once I got that idea in my head, there was no going back from that. When I ran all the numbers, it didn't make sense anymore to buy a single family house. And at that point, I turned to trying to convince my wife Lauren to go that route. And I created a PowerPoint presentation, sat her down. Didn't go very well. There were some tears probably on both sides. I just kind of left it alone. I was a little discouraged at that point. I didn't think anything was going to happen because she just did not seem into it, understandably. And a couple of weeks later, she came back to me and started asking some questions. And that's when we just really sat down and started talking seriously about, becoming landlords, looking at multifamily properties and trying to make that happen. And of course, we did the move back in with your parents thing, and we moved in with my parents in Henniker. We ended up living with my parents for a year, and that was a whole nother thing, trying to convince Lauren to do that. But ultimately, what that allowed us to do was save over 30 grand in a single year. All that rent we were paying went straight into savings, and we tightened up our budget. And that put us in a position where we were able to, to pull the trigger on a multifamily. And while we were living with my parents, I was still listening to Bigger Pockets and doing different research, trying to just read different books and consume as much as I could to get myself up to speed as a first-time investor. And I started, we had a real estate agent. We started looking at potential multifamily properties that were on Zillow and Trulia and, realtor.com. And ultimately there just wasn't much inventory. And if you guys have been paying attention now, I'm sure there's even less inventory that are actually listed on the MLS and that are out on the market. And we decided to start sending, direct mail letters to houses. But I didn't just want to send letters to random houses throughout the city. So I found a website called listsource.com, and I was able to actually purchase a list of multifamily houses, and we ultimately decided we wanted a 3-unit or 4-unit. Duplex would have been great, but the numbers just made even more sense if the more units we were able to get. So I bought a list that listed all the 3- and 4-unit multifamilies in the North End of Manchester. And I started looking up every single house on Google Maps. I went to, it's the Vision Government Solutions. So for Manchester, you go to the GIS. If you just type in Vision Government Solutions, you can actually go and you can look at all the tax records and see information about all the houses, in the city. And I just started putting together spreadsheets and figuring out which houses that, we might want to invest in. And once I had a list of about 100 houses, I started handwriting letters. We bought, we had pictures of ourselves with our dogs hiking in the mountains. We printed those off and we added that photo to every handwritten letter, and then we mailed those off to 100 different multifamily houses in Manchester. So it was really personalized versus just like a generic letter that you could mass mail, throughout the city. We wanted it to be very targeted, and it paid off. We started getting responses from homeowners, a lot of them saying, this was a great idea. We never respond to these letters, but your letter was so personal and nice. We just wanted to let you know that we'll keep you in mind in the future if we do decide to sell. But ultimately, we did get a handful of owners that were interested in selling. We ended up going and looking at a few of them. None of those panned out, but ultimately I was at the brewery one day working, and I got a call from a real estate agent who said, "Hey, my parents received your letter in the mail, they asking to buy their multifamily. They're not currently looking to sell their multifamily, but I'm a real estate agent, and I have a house that I'm going to be listing on the market in a couple of weeks. Maybe you might be interested in taking a look at it." He told me the address. I looked at my Google spreadsheet or my Excel spreadsheet, and sure enough, that was one of the houses that I was about to write a letter for and send out a letter to. And it just kind of all came together and worked out, and we ended up going in to see the property. It's a 4-unit multifamily. And they ended up listing it on the market a couple of weeks later just to get other offers, but we had already gotten on their radar, met the owner, put in an offer, and started that negotiation. And ultimately, that's how we ended up in the house we're in now. And when we moved into this property, we inherited 3 tenants, 3 incredible tenants, luckily. And we were off and running. And there were some projects that we identified right away that we knew we'd have to tackle over time. But all in all, the property is in great shape. It's in a good location. We've done a lot of landscaping to it over the last 2 years. We had one of our tenants leave the studio unit, and we completely gutted it, did rewiring, put in a new kitchen, and placed a new tenant in there over this past winter. In the middle of the pandemic, even because vacancy in Manchester is so low, we were able to find a great tenant. And right now, all of our units are fully occupied. We are bringing in $3,250 in rent per month. Our loan, our mortgage payment is $2,900 a month. So we are netting $349. We are currently in the process of refinancing, which will lower our payment another couple $100. So we're going to be netting over $500 pretty soon. Obviously, that goes towards electricity and water and sewer and hot water or gas. But we're living here for free, and we're even making some money on top of that, which is just incredible. Thinking back a couple of years ago, and then how we were able to kind of bring our realize this dream and bring this all to fruition. And now that we don't have this mortgage, we are able to pursue other things that we're interested in, such as Dog Hop, which is a new small business that I am currently starting with Lauren. So yeah, it's that's kind of how we did it. We were able to I found a good, as Nick said, you really want to find a good agent that knows, that preferably owns their own properties and has that experience and can help you when looking for potential properties, because they can help you run the numbers and they can really let you know whether it's a good deal or not. So we found a good agent who has that experience, but definitely talk to Nick and see if you can work with him and his brokerage, because that was key for us. We also found a good local lawyer to draft up our leases for us. So Brian Shaughnessy is who we used. I guess he also wrote a lot of the New Hampshire case law. We have a copy of the New Hampshire landlord and tenant law. It's good to get a copy of this and educate yourself as a landlord, so you know, so you're not discriminating against tenants, and you just know all the ins and outs of what you can and cannot do as a landlord in New Hampshire. And I also joined the New Hampshire Real Estate Investors Association for a year, and I started going to their monthly meetings and just networking with people in the industry. And that was really helpful for me as well in landing this deal and getting started. We hope to invest in more properties in the future, but right now we're enjoying living mortgage free and are again focusing on other things right now.
Can I chime in?
Absolutely.
You guys see me? Hi, I'm Lauren, Joseph's wife and Director of Marketing and Communications at the Chamber. And I have 2 points I just want to bring up. And one is a huge reason people are deterred from doing something like this is the scary fear of managing tenants. That's a huge piece of it. You might think finding a property and fixing it up is kind of really fun part of it. But the tenant management piece can definitely be intimidating. And the key there is putting systems in place and just treating it like a business. So you can make it so your tenants aren't contacting you at all hours of the day. And you can make it so you have all of these systems in place so that really it's kind of just this like schedule of things that you need to do that you work into your week or your month. So vetting your tenants, take it super seriously and put processes in place for that. And then once you secure good tenants, just having those processes in place ahead of time. And you can make changes as you go. You're going to set rules for yourself that you really want to try to stick to, and using the BiggerPockets guidebooks really helped us as far as tenant management. This, I've read this like 100 times. Joseph listened to it like 100 times. And that really helped us map everything out in advance. I feel like we've really lucked out with having great tenants, but also not having too much tenant related headaches, because we really tried to think of everything in advance. So as issues come up, we already have a roadmap on how to handle it. So just wanted to add that because I think, if you're doing considering this, or trying to consider a significant other to do this with you, or a partner to do this with you, that's one of the main things, at least. One person in the partnership is going to be like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to deal with the tenant piece. And I can promise you, I was not on board with any of this idea to begin with. Joseph created a huge PowerPoint presentation for me to convince me, and it still took some time, but I don't regret any of it. And the reality is, it has created so much flexibility for us to be able to do more things that we want to do in the future. And we want to get more properties in the future as well. But setting that goal to get that first one and come up with a plan is important. So I think those are the 2 main things I wanted to bring up. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I do have a business degree and a background in business, but nothing in college prepared me for for any of this process. I didn't have a single class that taught you how to be a real estate investor, or I had no idea where to start. So I guess the point is, anybody can, it's just a step-by-step process. You just once you learn one thing, then you can learn the next. And it's not hard. You just have to know where to start. And, BiggerPockets for me was where I started. I recommend you take a look at the website, and they have calculators on there where you can, crunch all the numbers on a potential, house, and it'll give you a printout, and it'll kind of just, show you all the numbers. And then you could take that to your significant other. And that's what I did. I showed Lauren, I said, hey, these are what the numbers are. Like, look at my beautiful graphs and everything. And it just helps to visualize and explain to, somebody that you might be trying to do this with, that it's not that scary. It's just a matter of sitting down and figuring it out. The market is tough right now. So you do have to, that's why we hand wrote letters and tried to do everything we could to find deals that were off market. But opportunities are always coming to the surface. So you just got to be ready for it.
Thank you so much, Joseph. And thank you, Lauren, as well, for chiming in. Absolutely incredible. And thank you to all of our panelists. Joseph, I'm not sure that you know this, but watching you and Lauren go through this process of purchasing a multifamily and house hacking is what convinced me to consider it, because my fiance has been pushing for it for about 5 years. And I said, no. I was that partner in the relationship who said, I have no interest. And seeing you both go through that, I am now the proud owner of one of these books as well, because Lauren suggested it. So
there you go.
I thank you to both of you. But I also want to let everyone on the call know, I know we're a little bit over time, so if you do need to hop off, please feel free to do so. This is being recorded, and we will send the link out to watch this recording after the program has concluded. But I do just want to take a moment to see if there are any questions in here. I haven't seen any come in the chat, but certainly if anyone would like to unmute themselves and ask a question, feel free to do so. And if not, I'll just follow up with one quick question for each of our presenters, if you don't mind. Joseph, I'll start with you, a super simple one. Do you enjoy being a landlord?
I do. And that's really because of the systems that Lauren talked about that we put in place. I think bad landlords are typically ones that never wanted to be in that position in the first place. They may have inherited that property from relatives, or they were in it just for, financial reasons, which is a good reason to do it. But you also have to really want that responsibility. Your tenants are your customers. And the sooner you realize that, I think the more successful you'll be. I've been in the service industry with, working in the tasting room at Great North and other places. And you have to treat it, that way. It's a service industry in a sense. You're providing a home for somebody, and that's, a really fulfilling thing. So, speaking for myself, I do like being a landlord.
I love it. That's great. Treat it like a business and it'll treat you like a business, right?
Right.
Hey, what would you say is one detail of the financing process that most first-time home buyers are often surprised about?
I would say probably it's a combination of the amount of documentation you need to provide. It's a lot. It's gotten a lot easier these days because everything's digital, but you still it's going to take a little bit of time to pull everything together. So the more you can, make sure that you have everything digitized is just going to save you a lot of time. But I would say probably the amount of funds needed for closing costs. Particularly because in New Hampshire, we have very high property taxes. And when you close on a property, transfer taxes are split between the seller and the buyer, 50-50, and they can be really costly. So, just keep in mind that your closing costs are going to be pretty high, relatively speaking. So, down payment and closing costs, you do need to have a fair amount on hand to make it work. But the first-time homebuyer programs, the low to moderate income homebuyer programs, they do help with that, with the lower down payments. But just keep in mind that I did the same thing, Joseph. I moved in with my parents for, my husband and I moved in with our Labrador at the time. Moved in with my parents for 6 months to help, just save up to afford our first home. So anything you can do to try and build up those nest eggs is really helpful, because those closing costs can be pretty high.
Great. And then Nick, what would you say is the best first step for young professionals who want to become house hackers? Like, where do they begin? What's the first step?
Sure. Well, Joseph mentioned the platform Bigger Pockets, and I didn't get into that aspect of my story, but that is an amazing website that I was turned on to when I was still in grad school. And I spent hundreds of hours watching that podcast, reading the forums. So I don't think there's a single better way to get an initial taste of what it's like to buy your first house hack deal than to just go to Bigger Pockets. Then from there, I would really try to leverage organizations like the Chamber, right? There's investors like myself, like Joseph, that are members of the Chamber. We're very eager to help younger investors, just as some older individuals helped us just a few years ago. So we're both more than willing, more than happy to sit down and grab a coffee and talk about our personal experiences in more detail. So
Excellent.
my answer is go to biggerpockets.com and then just reach out to us directly.
It's
Awesome.
that easy.
Great. Well, thank you so much to all three of you for serving as our panelists today. So much wisdom that you shared with each of us. And like Nick just said, if you have questions, please reach out to each of them. We'll send you their contact information in our follow-up email. A huge thank you as well to our presenting sponsor, Cambridge Trust. And please connect with us, Manchester Young Professionals, on social media. You can join our mailing list. We also have a great closed Facebook group, and maybe we can include that in our follow-up email as well if you're not already a part of that. And just thank you for being here. Check out The Scoop, and we look forward to seeing you at our next program. Have a great rest of your day.